Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 5 articles for you in this episode, and all the URLs are in the description of the video for your convenience. The first one here is off of freerangereport.com, and it says, Bunkerville trial. FBI informant only defendant to utter violent threats in entrapment videos. Every interview that was shown underscored the peaceful character of the defendants until they played the interview with the FBI informant. Greg Burleson uttered hateful and spiteful words on camera. He made violent threats, including stating that he came to put some BLM agent 6 feet under. Let's see. It says Longbow Productions FBI Reloaded. Interviews of various defendants showed them to be peaceful men. It was disclosed in a Las Vegas courtroom that the FBI set up a fake production company called Longbow Productions. They seem to have been put in place for the sole purpose of entrapping people involved with the Bundy family and the 2014 protest against the BLM. 5 men are accused of various felonies involved with the Bunkerville standoff, with a 6th defendant being named as an FBI informant. Greg Burleson was outed by the FBI on the witness stand this week as a confidential informant that has worked with the FBI since 2012. Longbow Productions had equipment, fake websites, fake prior productions, the works. They were to tell everyone that they were filming a documentary about a standoff called America Reloaded. The fake film credentials were hopefully going to give them access to the very heart of the Patriots world. The undercover agents with Longbow did meet with several people that had attended the 2014 event, as was disclosed during the testimony. Several of their interviews were played as evidence for the jury, or more accurately, several parts of these interviews were played as they were selectively fragmented. The entrapment included feeding alcohol to the defendants in order to get them to loosen their tongues. The more they talked, the more they might incriminate themselves. Interviews of various defendants showed them to be peaceful men. Scott Drexler went to Nevada because he saw fellow Americans that needed help. Eric Parker told of his fear that he would not make it home and how he knelt and prayed on the bridge. They only wanted peaceful ending to the conflict. Every interview that was shown underscored the peaceful character of the defendants until they played the interview with the FBI informant. Greg Burleson uttered hateful and spiteful words on camera. He made violent threats, including stating that he came to put some BLM agent 6 feet under. He also stated that the others there were not brave enough for a fight. And if you want to read the full article, there's a link that you can click on in this one that'll take you to the full article on this. But that's the overview on it. Wow. The next article off of Natural News says, Federal courthouse in Las Vegas bans jurors from reading the U.S. Constitution. The Bundy Ranch trials are underway. Having begun in February of this year, there have been reports that federal court Judge Gloria Navarro, who is presiding over the case, has dealt several blows to the defense team throughout the trial. She has allegedly given the prosecution favorable treatment regarding time expansion, granting them over 5 weeks to present their case. She has, however, refused to do the same for the defense, allowing the 6 defendants only 1 week to present their case. For the upcoming trial of Cliven Bundy, owner of the ranch at the center of the case, Navarro has also refused to allow nationally renowned lawyer Larry Klayman to defend Bundy, whose trial is set to begin in May. Klayman, who is the founder of Judicial Watch and Freedom Watch, is known for being steadfast in his litigation in support of mostly conservative-leaning and libertarian-leaning issues. As reported by the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Navarro said she would not allow Klayman into the high-profile criminal case until he can give her proof that ethical disciplinary proceedings against him in Washington, D.C. have been resolved in his favor. Judge Navarro has now taken her test for the defense even further and imposed a rule stating that no copies of the U.S. Constitution were allowed in this federal courtroom. According to Redoubt News, witnesses have told me that the U.S. Marshals have decided that they will no longer allow copies of the U.S. Constitution to be brought into the courthouse. They have even gone so far as to remove them from ladies' purses to be discarded into the trash. It is not limited to just those that are showing from shirt pockets. Defendant Eric Parker, who has consistently placed a copy of the Constitution in his pocket during these proceedings, was forced to remove it and to keep it flat at the defendant's table so the jury could not see it. The jury cannot be allowed to even look at the Constitution. Eric Parker, known during the standoff as the man on the bridge or the Bundy Ranch sniper, has been adamant that this case will set a precedent regarding government overreach and constitutional rights. During an interview with the Early Rising, the married father of two said, "I believe in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. I believe that those are natural rights, God-given, that the Constitution only reaffirms them. I believe that without defending them, they don't truly exist." Having a copy of the Constitution in his pocket during the trial no doubt reinforces the virtues of liberty, limited government, and the constitutionality protected rights that he believes in. Now that symbol is being taken away. The Bundy Ranch standoff, or the Battle of Bunker Hill, was a 6-day standoff between armed ranchers and the U.S. Bureau of Land Management officials in April of 2014. Bundy, a cattle rancher, had refused to pay federal fees after he allowed his cows to graze on the so-called public lands. He vehemently disagrees with federal authorities, arguing that the property is where his ancestors first settled in the 1880s. In 1998, the BLM took Bundy to federal court, which ruled in favor of the BLM and awarded them $1.2 million. Bundy has refused to pay the fees, and after years of failed negotiations, the BLM showed up to the ranch in an attempt to gather his cattle as payment for the outstanding fees. Bundy, with the help of several other supporters, including his sons, protested the takeover, which the prosecution has presented at trial to be an armed assault against the officers. During the event, the only person injured was one of Bundy's sons, who was tasered by one of the officers. A total of 19 people were arrested and jailed in connection with the standoff. 2 pled guilty and accepted punishment for lesser charges, while the remaining others, including Bundy and his sons, pled not guilty to conspiracy, assault on a federal officer, obstruction of justice, and several other charges. If convicted of all charges, each defendant could face up to 101 years in prison. And it says, follow more news about the outrageous government tyranny at tyranny.news if you want to read more on that. The next article I have is off of Scott. Or I should say SOT.net, and it says Washington militarized land grabs targeting the Sioux Indian Reservation in South Dakota. In the wake of the Bundy Ranch crisis, sparked by militarized federal land grab effort in Nevada, it seems that the Department of Interior has set its sights on a new prize, this time targeting once protected Indian reservation land on Pine Ridge in South Dakota. The Oglala Sioux and Lakota Sioux of the reservation have been told by the federal government that the National Park Service will be taking land that comprises the South Unit of the Badlands National Park as new tribal national park. Only the wording in the bill clearly indicates that it will be a federally managed national park under the Department of Interior, giving mere lip service to its tribal title. The congressional bill has already been written, and if passed through Congress, both tribal members and non-tribal members will be stripped of their deeded land at a price set by the federal government. If owners do not accept Washington's offer, expected to be a meager one, the land can be acquired at no cost because the measure was waived all or has waived all appraisal rights and stipulates that Washington can simply take the Indian land by force under eminent domain. Thousands of tribe members will be affected by the land grab. Some residents will be forced to relocate, and many more will lose their income from grazing allotments on the land as a result, which will ultimately force any remaining independent cattle ranchers out of business. In addition to this, tribal members will lose their share of income from entrance fees collected at the adjacent north gate of the Badlands National Park, a punitive measure which will further compound the existing economic depression on a reservation where the average annual income is around $8,000 a year. Washington may be pining, yeah, Washington may be pining for yet another wounded knee, as many residents and tribal members are prepared to stand their ground in the face of a federal imperialist policy inside U.S. borders, a trend which many Americans have experienced firsthand, particularly in western states like Utah, Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. Tribal members and local cattle rancher Bud May believe the issue is not confined to Pine Ridge. Many states, or I'm sorry, let me try that again. May states there is a feeling of common cause between attached parties on this issue, namely tribes and other reservations. The bottom line is we'll all be under dictatorial control if something is not done quick. The federal move initially gained traction after a tribal ordinance passed by the Tribal Council in the spring of 2013. Many tribal members have been frustrated with the Tribal Council, which has gone against the will of the people to back the park. All 9 districts on the reservation have passed unanimous resolutions against the park, along with the Shannon County Commissioners and several South Dakota state legislators. To add insult to injury, it appears that the landowners were only notified of the measures until after it had passed, with their first news of the federal plan coming in the form of eviction notices issued by the Bureau of Indian Affairs Land Operations Department in the fall of 2013. The Tribal Council of 19 has yet to allow democratic referendum on the federal takeover, although sources confirm that the referendum option is on the agenda for next month's council meeting. Cowboys and Indians in common cause. The federal land grab crisis was elevated to national news in April when Nevada independent rancher Cliven Bundy and his supporters stood toe-to-toe in an armed standoff with the Department of Interior's Bureau of Land Management, or the BLM, over Bundy's private property and land rights, which trace back to the 1870s. Lori Storm, a Nebraska radio host who has been following recent developments at Pine Ridge, describes the synergy now happening between what were previously strange bedfellows. Storm explains the difference between this situation and the Bundy Ranch conflict. It will be the first time in history of our country that the Cowboys and the Indians pose a united front against federal government that is used to winning battles by first dividing and then conquering. Already, many landowners are taking the position that they will not comply with the latest order from the government, leaving many to wonder whether this potential standoff will become the third Wounded Knee incident involving a standoff between the Sioux Nation and the U.S. federal government. In June the 25th is the anniversary of the infamous conflict at Little Bighorn between General Custer, the Northern Cheyenne, and the Lakota Sioux. And this year's anniversary will see residents of the Pine Ridge Reservation, along with other protesters, gathering again Wounded Knee to protest the theft of their land by the federal government. Crowds will gather to protest, and a symbolic ride will take place today, where tribal riders will be joined by riders from the ranches in Nebraska and South Dakota in the afternoon at Gordon Legion, in a show of solidarity on the issue of private property rights and grazing rights. Then I have this from congress.gov. It says, HJ Resolution 44, disapproving the rule submitted by the Department of Interior relating to the Bureau of Land Management regulations that established the procedures used to prepare, revise, or amend land use plans pursuant to the Federal Land Policy and Management Act of 1976. And all it shows on this one is the very first page of it. It says 115th Congress of the United States of America at the first session begun and held in the city of Washington on Tuesday, the 3rd day of January, 2017. Joint resolution disapproving the rule submitted by the Department of the Interior relating to the Bureau of Land Management regulations that establish the procedures used to prepare, revise, or amend land use plans pursuant to the Federal Land Policy and Management Act of 1976. Resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled, that Congress disapproves the rule submitted by the Bureau of Land Management of the Department of Interior relating to resource management planning. And such rule shall have no force or effort. Then what I have, and I'm not going to read this because we'd be here till next month and beyond probably. But this is off the Federal Register. If you want to take a look at this, if you're interested in this topic, you can pull this up and read this. This is the actual well, resolution, I guess is what they call this, that was passed. And it's the Bureau of Land Management in the Interior, and this is the final rule. Now, I will read the summary of it because that's only a paragraph. It says, the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, is amending its regulations that establish the procedures used to prepare, revise, or amend land use plans pursuant to the Federal Land Policy and Management Act, the FLPMA. The final rule affirms the important role of other federal agencies, the state and local governments, Indian tribes, and the public during the planning process, and enhances opportunities for public involvement and transparency during the preparation of resource management plans. The final rule will enable the BLM to more readily address resource issues at a variety of scales, such as wildfire, wildlife habitat, appropriate development, or the demand for renewable and non-renewable energy sources, and to respond more effectively to change. The final rule emphasizes the role of using high-quality information, including the best available scientific information in the planning process, and the importance of evaluating the resource, environment, ecological, social, and economic conditions at the onset of planning. Finally, the final rule makes revisions to clarify existing text and to improve the readability of the planning regulations. And the final rule, it was effective January the 11th of 2017. So this was still under the Obama administration before Trump came into office. So I have several questions about this. Still, why is it not in here that the BLM is disarmed? They should not be armed and militarized and all that. Oh, no, 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 no. That's not what they're supposed to be about. And two, why do they really exist in the first place? Because they are unnecessary. If he wants to get rid of a branch that's sucking money and doing nothing but causing problems for Americans, this would be a good place to start. So, if you want to read the rest of that, you can. But I found this very interesting that this is going on with all the trouble that's taking place in the Bundys under trial. all this is coming to light here. So feel free to leave your comments on this. Let me know what you think about it. I'm not far enough out west for the BLM to be of any real effect to me personally, but yet, I am a girl from a farm background, and I know how important it is to keep the farmers in business, farmers and the ranchers. And BLM running them off their property and causing the issues that they've caused, that's not acceptable. That's got to stop. If you like what I'm doing here, give it a thumbs up, share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news. The more that hear it, the more that wake up, and the more involved we become. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. That way you'll stay informed. I'll see you in the next episode.